He almost did not go out that night. The day had been long, heavy in a way that had nothing to do with work hours and everything to do with life feeling stuck. He sat on the edge of his bed, phone in his hand, staring at a message that had come in an hour ago. It was an invitation to a small get-together. Nothing fancy. Just a few people, some music, late-night tea, and talking. The kind of night people went to when they wanted to feel less alone. He told himself he was tired. He told himself it was better to stay home. He had bills on his mind, unfinished plans, and a quiet fear that he was falling behind everyone else's age. But the room felt too silent, and the walls felt closer than usual. Finally, without fully deciding, he stood up, changed his shirt, and walked out. The place was modest, warm, and already filled with low voices and soft laughter. Shoes were scattered near the door. Someone had dimmed the lights, giving the room a calm, almost safe feeling. He didn't know many people there, which made him both nervous and relieved. He grabbed a cup of tea and stood near the side. Listening more than speaking, that was when she walked in. She didn't make a dramatic entrance. No one stopped talking. No heads turned all at once. But something about her presence quietly shifted the room. She looked around as if she wasn't sure she belonged there, then smiled politely and stepped inside. Her clothes were simple, her face calm, but her eyes carried stories she wasn't sharing. They didn't talk right away. Time passed slowly. Conversations overlapping, people drifting in small groups. He noticed her laughing at something someone said, then growing quiet again. She noticed him too, standing alone, pretending to be interested in his phone. At some point, the noise softened. Someone put on music low enough to blend into the background. Chairs were pulled closer. The night stretched. She was the one who spoke first. "Is this your first time here?" she asked, her voice gentle, not curious in a sharp way, just open. He looked up, surprised, then nodded. "Yeah, I almost didn't come. Same," she said. "I had to argue with myself for an hour." That made him smile. The tension eased just a little. They talked about small things at first, where they were from, what they did during the day. Nothing deep, nothing risky. But the conversation didn't feel forced. There were pauses that felt comfortable instead of awkward. When one of them laughed, it felt natural, not polite. As the night moved forward, the room seemed to shrink around them. People came and went, conversations ended and restarted. But they stayed. At some point, she asked him what he did for work. It was a simple question, one he had answered many times before. He hesitated. The truth was not terrible, but it felt small. He had plans that hadn't worked out yet. Dreams that were still dreams. A job that paid the bills but didn't impress anyone, especially himself. He had learned that when people asked, he often listened differently once they knew. So he told a slightly better version, not a big lie. Not something impossible. Just a version of himself that sounded more settled, more confident, more successful than he actually felt. He watched her face as he spoke, afraid and hopeful at the same time. She nodded, impressed in a quiet way. Not excited. Just respectful. And just like that, the lie existed. He felt it settle between them. Light, but present. She shared pieces of her own life, too. She spoke about moving away from a place that no longer felt like home. About learning to be strong when she didn't feel strong. About choosing peace over noise. He listened closely, genuinely interested, forgetting for moments that he was hiding something. Hours passed without either of them noticing. The tea went cold. The music stopped. People began saying their goodbyes, one by one. Outside, the night air was cool and quiet. They stood near the door, unsure how to end something that had started without effort. "I'm glad I came," she said softly. "Me too," he replied, and meant it. They exchanged numbers, not as a big moment. Just as something natural, like it made sense. Then she stepped out into the night, disappearing down the street. He walked home slowly, his mind replaying the evening. Her smile, her voice, the way she listened, the way she made the world feel less heavy for a few hours. Then the lie came back. It didn't feel dangerous yet. Just uncomfortable. He told himself it wouldn't matter. It was only one night. One conversation. People forget. Life moves on. But the next morning, there was a message. She thanked him for the conversation. Said it was rare to talk like that with someone new. Said she hoped they could meet again. He stared at the screen longer than he should have. Something real had started, and it had grown from a night he almost skipped and a truth he almost told. He replied, and without knowing it, he stepped into a story that would ask more from him than he was ready to give. The night was over, but its echo stayed. One night, one lie, and something unexpected. It's already finding its way into his life. The next days passed in a blur of routine, but he couldn't stop thinking about her. Every quiet moment, every cup of coffee, every evening walk brought her back to his mind. He replayed the conversation from that night. Every detail, every pause, every laugh. The lie he had told hovered in the back of his mind. A small shadow that made him nervous even as he smiled at the memory. She messaged him first, breaking the silence that had stretched longer than either of them intended. Her words were casual, almost too casual, but they carried warmth. She asked how he was, how the week had treated him, and mentioned a small cafe she had discovered nearby. It was the kind of message that could have been sent to anyone, but he felt the difference. It felt meant for him. He typed back carefully, not wanting to seem too eager. Words felt heavier than they should. He wanted to tell the truth about himself, about the little insecurities that had pushed him into lying that night, but he held back. Instead, he crafted replies that were safe, friendly, confident. It was easier to be the version of himself she had met, the one she seemed to admire. They started meeting more often, though still casually. A walk in the park, a coffee, a quiet dinner at a small restaurant. Each time, he felt the connection growing, the ease of talking, the comfort of her presence. And each time the lie remained a silent witness to everything they shared. It was small, harmless in his eyes, but it grew heavier with each encounter. She shared her own life in pieces, carefully chosen fragments that revealed more than she intended. He learned about her past struggles, her moments of doubt, and the ways she had learned to cope. He listened, genuinely interested, offering empathy and understanding. And she listened to him too, though she did not know the parts he hid. One evening, they found themselves sitting on a bench in a quiet part of the city. The sky was painted with soft oranges and pinks, and the city noise felt distant. He wanted to tell her everything. He wanted to let her see the real him, the one who sometimes failed, sometimes felt lost, sometimes struggled to meet his own expectations. But the words stuck in his throat. He worried that revealing the truth would break the fragile connection they were building. Instead, smiled and told a story about his work, about a success he had enjoyed recently. She listened, interested, nodding and laughing at the right moments. He felt a pang of guilt, but it was tempered by the way she looked at him, trusting. Open, sincere, they laughed together, shared stories, and for a while, the lie felt small, insignificant. But late at night, when he was alone, it weighed heavily on his mind. He questioned himself. Was he starting a connection based on trust, or on a small deception? Could love grow on the foundation of a lie, even one as seemingly harmless as this? She, too, felt a shift. She noticed the way he sometimes hesitated before speaking, the way he smiled when he thought she wasn't looking, the small pauses that hinted at things left unsaid. She didn't confront him, but the questions lingered in her mind. Why did she feel drawn to someone who seemed almost too perfect in moments? Why did she sense that there was more behind the surface? Days turned into weeks. They shared meals, walks, and long conversations that stretched into the night. He began to feel a sense of warmth and belonging he hadn't known in years. But the lie remained, a silent part of every interaction, a weight he couldn't shake. One afternoon, while they were at a small bookstore, she picked up a book he had recommended the first night they met. She smiled, showing it to him. I remembered you mentioned this. I thought I'd give it a try. He felt a mix of pride and guilt. Pride, because she remembered, because she cared. Guilt, because he wondered how much of her trust was built on what he hadn't shared. He smiled, thanked her, and they wandered through the aisles together, talking quietly, laughing softly. For a moment he almost believed the lie wouldn't matter, that it could fade into the background. But reality was patient. The lie waited, ready to surface at the wrong time. And as their bond grew stronger, he knew that eventually the truth would have to be told. The question wasn't if, but when. Still, he held on to the moments, to the laughter, to the feeling of being understood. Each meeting, each word, each shared silence deepened the unexpected connection between them. He realized that love was creeping in, unannounced, quiet, and persistent. And with it came the fear of losing her if she ever discovered the truth. And so, he continued, navigating the delicate balance between honesty and the small deception that had started it all. Every moment was beautiful, but every moment also carried the weight of the secret he could no longer ignore. As the weeks went by, the bond between them grew stronger. Each meeting was easier, more natural, as if they had known each other for much longer than they really had. They began to share more than casual stories. She told him about her fears and dreams, and he told her things he hadn't shared with anyone else. It was intoxicating, and for a time, it felt like nothing else in the world existed except the two of them. But the lie, the small deception he had told that first night, was never far from his mind. It was quiet at first, a small whisper when he was alone, but as their connection deepened, it began to grow louder. Every time she laughed at something he said, every time she asked about his work or his life, the lie pressed against his conscience. Demanding to be acknowledged, he tried to ignore it. He told himself it was harmless, that it was a small thing that didn't define who he really was. But the truth had a way of creeping in small ways. Her questions were always gentle, her curiosity always sincere, and he could feel the truth pushing to the surface, like water slowly seeping through a crack. One evening, they went for a walk along the river. The sky was overcast, the kind of gray that made the world feel soft and quiet. The city lights reflected on the water, shimmering like small pieces of gold. They walked side by side, not speaking for a while, just enjoying the comfort of each other's presence. It was one of those moments that felt simple and perfect. But he knew that even perfect moments could be fragile. She broke the silence first. "Do you ever feel like you're holding something back?" she asked, glancing at him. There was no accusation in her tone, only curiosity, and it made his chest tighten. He hesitated. His mind raced. He could tell her the truth, finally, and risk everything they had built. Or he could stay quiet and hope that the lie didn't grow into something that could hurt her. He chose silence, just a small nod. She didn't press, and for a moment, relief washed over him. But as they continued to walk, he felt a growing tension inside himself. The connection they shared was too real, too strong, to be built on even a small deception. He knew that sooner or later, the truth would have to come out, and the longer he waited, the harder it would be. They stopped at a small cafe, one neither of them had been to before. It was quiet and cozy, with soft music playing in the background and the scent of fresh coffee in the air. They sat across from each other, hands wrapped around warm cups, and talked about everything and nothing. He found himself laughing more freely than he had in years. She smiled in a way that made his heart ache with both joy and fear. After coffee, they walked through a nearby park. The trees were bare, their branches reaching up like fingers toward the gray sky. He felt the weight of the lie pressing against him, heavier with every step. He wanted to tell her, wanted to be honest and open, but the words stayed trapped in his throat instead. He spoke about his day, about small victories and minor annoyances, carefully omitting the parts that were true but would reveal his insecurity. She listened, genuinely interested, and for a time, the guilt receded. He could almost believe that the lie didn't matter. The bond they shared was strong enough to survive anything, but reality was patient. The small inconsistencies, the little half-truths, began to accumulate. She asked about a colleague he had mentioned before, and he had to think quickly to keep his story straight. She remarked on something he had said the first week, and he realized he had to remember the details of the lie he had told, or risked being caught. Each interaction became a delicate dance, a balancing act between truth and fiction. One night, They sat on a park bench, the city quiet around them. She looked at him, her eyes searching, and asked about his future plans. The question was simple, but it carried weight. She wanted to know what kind of life he envisioned, and he felt the truth pressing against his lips. He wanted to tell her everything: the doubts, the fears, the failures, but he held back. Instead, he spoke about a future that sounded confident, successful, and stable. It was a version of himself he didn't fully recognize, but it was the one she had come to admire. She smiled, satisfied with the answer, and leaned her head on his shoulder. He felt the warmth of her presence, the comfort of her trust, and a pang of guilt stabbed through him. How could he enjoy this, knowing that it was built on a foundation that wasn't entirely real? Days turned into weeks, and the lie continued to grow, invisible but ever-present. He began to notice her small gestures, how she would laugh at things he didn't find particularly funny, how she would listen with genuine interest, how her eyes would light up at small victories. Each gesture reminded him of what was at stake, and each gesture made the lie feel heavier. He tried to distract himself, to focus on the moments they shared rather than the truth he withheld. They cooked together, went to small concerts, explored quiet streets in the evenings, and shared meals at little-known cafes. The connection deepened, and the intimacy grew, making the lie feel almost unbearable. One evening, while sitting on his couch, she asked him about his family. He hesitated, knowing that this question could reveal more than he wanted to share. He told her a version that was partly true, partly crafted to hide the insecurities he didn't want her to see. She listened, nodded, and shared stories of her own family. The conversation was warm and genuine, but the lie lingered between them like a shadow. He realized that love, when it started to feel real, demanded honesty. And yet fear held him back. Fear of losing her, fear of rejection, fear of the fragile connection they had built, shattering under the weight of truth. Each day became a struggle, a silent war between desire and deception. She, unknowingly, began to sense it too. There were moments when she noticed his hesitations, the way he sometimes avoided direct answers, the little pauses that seemed too long. She didn't confront him, but the questions lingered in her mind, quiet and persistent. He knew that the time was coming when the truth would have to be faced. The lie could not last forever. And yet each day, each moment, each shared smile made it harder to speak, harder to risk the bond they had built. And so they continued, walking the fine line between connection and secrecy, between love and the fear that the smallest truth could unravel everything. Each moment was beautiful, each laugh precious, each shared silence intimate. And yet the lie waited, quiet and patient, ready to surface at the most inconvenient moment. Threatening to change everything they had built together, the tension had been building for weeks. Quiet and almost invisible, but it was always there. He knew the lie could not remain hidden forever, not with the closeness they had developed. She had grown to trust him, to rely on him for comfort and laughter, and every moment he spent with her made the weight of the secret heavier. Yet the fear of losing her, of breaking the delicate thread connecting them, held him back from speaking the truth. It happened one evening when they went to a small art gallery. The space was quiet, filled with soft lighting and the muted sound of classical music. Paintings lined the walls, each one telling a story. He walked beside her, feeling the warmth of her hand brushing against his, and tried to focus on the beauty around them, on the laughter they shared, on the ease of her conversation. But the lie waited in the shadows, a silent presence in every smile. Every word she stopped in front of a painting, a landscape filled with light and shadow. She looked at it for a long moment before turning to him. "Do you ever feel like life isn't exactly what you expected?" she asked softly, her voice carrying a hint of vulnerability. It was a simple question, but it struck him deeply. He wanted to answer honestly, to tell her everything he felt, but the lie had become a part of him now, tangled with his words. And he couldn't find the courage to break the illusion. Instead, he smiled and gave an answer that sounded calm and confident. "Sometimes," he said, "but I think that's what makes life interesting. The unexpected moments, the surprises, even the mistakes." She nodded, but he saw a flicker in her eyes, a shadow of doubt. She wanted more, and he wanted to give it, but the lie held him back. The rest of the evening was filled with quiet conversation, soft laughter, and moments of shared silence. They walked through the streets afterward, the city alive with lights and faint sounds. They stopped at a small cafe, one tucked into a corner with warm lighting and a few scattered tables. They sat close, their hands brushing across the table, their eyes meeting often. Then came the question he had been avoiding. "You've never really told me about your work," she said, her tone gentle but insistent. He felt a sudden tightness in his chest. He had crafted his story carefully, shaping it to seem more confident, more accomplished than he felt. The details were now being tested. He hesitated, searching for words that wouldn't betray the truth. He spoke carefully, describing projects and accomplishments, embellishing slightly, but not wildly. She listened, nodding, asking small questions, clearly impressed. But he noticed the way her gaze lingered, the way she watched him, and the lie felt heavier with every passing second. He realized that every interaction, every shared moment, was now built on a fragile foundation, and he feared the day it would crumble. Later they walked through a quiet park. The night was calm, the air cool and soft, and the city lights shimmered on the pathways. He wanted to tell her the truth, to let her see him as he truly was, without the carefully constructed version he had presented, but the words wouldn't come. Fear gripped him. Fear of losing the connection, fear of disappointing her, fear of the unknown. Days passed, and the tension grew. Every time they met, every laugh they shared, every gentle touch carried the weight of unspoken truth. He found himself withdrawing slightly, avoiding topics that could reveal the lie, careful with his words and actions. She noticed, subtle but undeniable, a change in him. He was still warm, still kind, still engaging. But there was a shadow, a hesitation that hadn't been there before. One afternoon, while they were walking through a quiet street lined with small shops, she stopped abruptly. "I feel like there's something you're not telling me," she said, her voice steady but serious. He froze, the words hitting him like a wave. His heart raced. She had sensed it, the unspoken truth, and now it was impossible to ignore. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. The fear, the guilt, the weight of the lie, all collided in a moment of silence. She waited, patient but firm, and he felt the full weight of what he had avoided for so long. The connection they had built, the trust, the warmth, all teetered on the edge of revelation. Finally he spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, and for the first time in weeks, he felt the truth rising to the surface. "Something I should have told you from the beginning." She listened, her eyes steady, her expression open. He took a deep breath and confessed, telling her everything he had withheld, everything he had feared would drive her away. He spoke of insecurities, of failures, of the small lie that had started the connection between them. The words felt heavy, but freeing, as if a weight had been lifted from his chest. She remained silent for a long moment, processing everything he had said. Her gaze was thoughtful, searching, and he felt the vulnerability between them grow even more intense. He feared the worst, feared that this revelation would shatter the bond they had built. But then, slowly, she reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm glad you told me," she said softly. "It matters that you were honest, even if it took time. We all have fears, and we all make mistakes. What matters is what we do next." Relief washed over him, but it was tempered by the knowledge that rebuilding trust would take time. They left the cafe together, walking slowly, hands intertwined, the night around them quiet and calm. The truth had been revealed, and though it had been difficult, it had not destroyed them. Instead, it had opened a new chapter, one built on honesty and understanding. It's fragile but real. Over the following days, they navigated the new dynamic with care. Conversations were more open, more honest, and the connection between them deepened in ways it hadn't before. The lie no longer cast a shadow, replaced by a tentative trust, recognition that love required both courage and vulnerability. They laughed, shared quiet moments, and leaned on each other, learning that intimacy was not just about closeness, but about facing truth together. The fear of losing one another was still present, but it was tempered by the strength of their bond. They had faced the lie, confronted the fears, and emerged with a deeper understanding of each other. And though the journey was not without challenges, the connection they shared was now stronger, built not on illusion but on the honesty and trust they had nurtured through the hardest moments. Time passed slowly after the truth had been revealed, yet something unspoken lingered between them. The air felt lighter in some ways because the lie was gone, but heavier in others because they both had to navigate the new honesty that had replaced it. It was like learning to walk again after a fall, cautious and careful, but hopeful. They continued to meet, but with a new rhythm. The casual conversations and gentle laughter were still there, but now there was a depth that had not existed before. He shared his worries and insecurities more openly, and she listened without judgment, offering understanding and comfort. In turn, she revealed fears she had long held back, moments of vulnerability that she had shared with almost no one. One afternoon, they went for a long walk along the river. The sky was clear, the sunlight reflecting off the water in a way that made the city feel soft and peaceful. They walked side by side, talking about small things at first, then gradually opening up about bigger dreams. He admitted the doubts that had haunted him, the moments of feeling lost, and she admitted the fears that had kept her from trusting easily in the past. Each revelation brought them closer, forming a foundation stronger than anything they had before. The days grew warmer, and they began spending more time outdoors, exploring quiet streets, parks, and cafes. They cooked together, sometimes laughing when things didn't go as planned, sometimes sharing moments of silence, simply enjoying the presence of one another. Every touch, every glance, every shared moment carried a quiet affirmation that they were there. Together, honestly, without the weight of secrets, he noticed the small ways she trusted him now. The way she leaned on his shoulder, the way she sought his opinion on things that mattered to her, the gentle warmth in her eyes when she spoke to him. It was all real, built not on pretense, but on understanding. And he, in turn, found himself growing more confident. Not because he had to impress, but because he could be himself fully. Knowing she accepted him, one evening, they found themselves sitting on a small bench in a quiet park. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow across the trees and paths. He took her hand gently, feeling the softness of her fingers, the pulse of life that made him realize how deeply he cared. He looked at her, her face bathed in the light, and felt a rush of emotion he could no longer ignore. "I never thought I could feel this way again," he said quietly, his voice trembling slightly. "After everything, I didn't believe someone could make me feel this whole, but you have. You've shown me trust, patience, and understanding, and I can't imagine not having you in my life." She turned to him, eyes glistening, and squeezed his hand. "I feel the same," she said softly. "It hasn't been easy, and there have been moments of doubt, but I see who you really are. And I want to be with you, not because of what I imagined, but because of the person you are, honestly, truly." It was in that moment, with the sun dipping below the horizon, that they both understood the depth of their feelings. The lie that had once threatened to tear them apart was no longer a factor. What remained was genuine connection, built on shared vulnerability and honesty. In the weeks that followed, they began planning small adventures together. Weekends were spent exploring nearby towns, walking through markets, trying new foods, and discovering quiet spots that seemed to belong only to them. They laughed at mistakes and misadventures. Learning to appreciate the imperfect beauty of life together, he began to notice how much she had changed him. Her presence had softened his fears, encouraged his dreams, and made him feel seen in a way he had never experienced before. And she noticed the patience, care, and attention he now gave to the small details of life, the way he listened without judgment, the way he made her feel safe to be herself. One evening, while watching the stars from a quiet rooftop, they sat close together, sharing stories of their pasts, their regrets, and their hopes. He realized that the unexpected love that had begun with a single night and a single lie had grown into something resilient, something real. They had faced fears, confronted insecurities, and emerged stronger because of the challenges they had overcome. Love, they both realized, was not about perfection. It was about trust, honesty, patience, and willingness to be vulnerable. It was about walking together through uncertainty, supporting one another, and finding joy in small moments. The unexpected had turned into a certainty of feeling deeply connected, and it was more powerful because it had been tested. Months passed, and the bond between them deepened further. They celebrated small milestones, shared quiet mornings with coffee and conversation, and found comfort in each other's presence, even during ordinary days. Their laughter filled the spaces between them, their shared silence spoke volumes, and their love grew quietly, steadily, without the need for grand gestures. He often thought back to that first night, the lie that had seemed insignificant at the time, and marveled at how far they had come. Life had its unpredictable moments, but what mattered was how they faced them together. The lie had tested them, but it had also led them to the honesty and connection that now defined their relationship. In the end, he realized that love was not about avoiding mistakes or hiding truths. It was about facing them, learning from them, and choosing each other despite imperfections. They walked hand in hand through life's unpredictable paths, grateful for the night that had brought them together, the challenges that had taught them resilience, and the unexpected love that had grown into something enduring and true. Even after months of building a deep connection, life had its way of testing them again. The comfort and trust they had cultivated could not shield them from moments of doubt, unexpected challenges, or the ordinary pressures of life. He had grown more confident, more honest, more patient. But there were days when uncertainty crept in, and she, too, had her moments of reflection and hesitation. One Saturday morning, he woke early and went for a quiet walk before the world fully stirred. The streets were empty, the air crisp, carrying a gentle chill that made him pull his coat tighter around him. He thought about her, about how far they had come, and about the simple yet profound moments that had shaped their bond. Every shared smile, every conversation, every gentle touch seemed etched in his mind. And yet he felt an unease he couldn't shake. She joined him later, meeting him at a small cafe they often frequented. The morning sun streamed through the windows, casting a golden light on the table where they sat. They sipped coffee slowly, letting the silence stretch comfortably between them. There was a sense of calm, but also a quiet tension, kind that surfaces when hearts are unspokenly aware of life's uncertainties. He reached across the table and gently touched her hand. "I've been thinking," he said, voice soft, "about how we handle things when life doesn't go as planned. About how sometimes we face moments that test us, moments that can make us doubt even the strongest connections." She looked at him, eyes wide but steady, understanding the weight of his words. "I think about that too," she replied. "We've come far, but it doesn't mean we won't face difficulties. Life doesn't wait for perfect timing or perfect people." Their conversation drifted into reflections on their past experiences, the lessons they had learned, and the fears they had overcome. He spoke about the insecurity that had made him lie that first night, about how it had haunted him, and how he had struggled with the thought of losing her. She shared her own struggles, the moment she had doubted trust. Now she had slowly learned to open her heart. Later that afternoon, they decided to take a walk in the park. The trees were beginning to show the first signs of spring, buds appearing along the branches, and the ground was soft with early blooms. They walked in silence at first, enjoying the sound of birds and the rustle of leaves. Occasionally, they exchanged small observations about the world around them, the kind of details that often go unnoticed but become meaningful when shared. As they walked, he felt a sudden urge to speak from the heart. "You've changed the way I see life," he said quietly. "Not just because of who you are, but because of how you make me want to be better. How you make me want to face things honestly, even when it's difficult." She smiled, her fingers brushing against his as they walked. "And you've shown me patience," she replied. "Patience, trust, and that it's okay to be imperfect." I've learned that love isn't about perfection, but about being present and honest. Even in small ways, their walk continued as the sun began to lower in the sky, casting long shadows and bathing everything in a soft, golden light. They found a quiet spot by the water, sitting on a bench that overlooked the gentle ripples. For a while, they simply watched the reflections of the sky dance on the surface, holding hands, letting words go unspoken because none were needed. Then came a moment of vulnerability. As inevitable as it was necessary, he turned to her, looking directly into her eyes, and spoke with a sincerity that made her heart tighten. I know we've faced challenges, and I know life isn't always going to be easy. But I want you to know that I'm committed to being honest with you, to facing everything with you, no matter what comes. You've become a part of my life I can't imagine living without. Tears glistened in her eyes as she nodded, squeezing his hand tightly. I feel the same, she whispered. I've learned that life is full of uncertainties, but love is about choosing each other every day, even when it's hard. And I choose you, no matter what. They spent the rest of the afternoon in quiet companionship, the kind that only comes after a foundation of trust and honesty has been established. They shared small jokes, light conversations, and occasional silences that were comfortable, not awkward. Each moment reinforced the bond that had grown from a single night and a single lie into something resilient and enduring as the days turned into weeks. They began to explore new aspects of their relationship. They planned small trips, revisited places from their early meetings, and created new memories that were untainted by fear or deception. Every shared experience, every challenge faced together, strengthened their connection, teaching them that love was not static, but something that required attention, care, and effort. He began to notice the subtle changes within himself. He no longer felt the weight of hiding parts of himself, no longer felt the need to impress or to construct an image. He could be honest, vulnerable, and real, and she accepted him completely. And she in turn grew more confident, more willing to trust, more open to embracing the unpredictability of life with him by her side. One evening, as they sat watching the city lights from a quiet hill, he realized that the unexpected love that had begun with uncertainty and a small deception had transformed into something deeply genuine. It was steady, resilient, and real. They had faced fears, confronted insecurities, and emerged with a love that was stronger because it had endured challenges and honesty. He turned to her, taking her hand in both of his, and said softly, I never imagined that one night, one lie, could lead to something so meaningful. But I'm grateful for it because it brought me to you. She smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. Sometimes life surprises us, she said quietly. The moments we think might be mistakes or missteps can lead to the most beautiful things. And I'm grateful for you too. The night settled around them, calm and peaceful, and they stayed there for a long while, holding hands, watching the lights, feeling the quiet strength of their connection. They understood that love was not about avoiding mistakes, not about perfection, but about honesty, patience, and choosing each other every day. As the city continued its quiet hum below, they realized that life would continue to bring challenges, moments of doubt, and surprises. But they also knew that whatever came, they would face it together, honestly, patiently. And with the unexpected love that had grown stronger through every test, every fear, and every shared moment, and that knowledge, simple yet profound, is the foundation upon which their future would be built. Time moved gently, each day carrying a mixture of ordinary life and moments that felt quietly extraordinary. By now, they had settled into a rhythm together, a dance of shared experiences, laughter, and conversations that spanned hours without ever feeling exhausting. Yet, despite the stability, life continued to test them in subtle ways, reminding them that even the strongest bonds required patience and care. One morning, he woke before dawn and went for a walk through the quiet streets, the cool air brushing his face. He thought about how far they had come since the first night, when a small lie had started a connection neither of them expected. That lie, once a source of guilt and tension, now felt like a distant memory, a small obstacle they had overcome together. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey, for the unexpected love that had grown from it, and for the woman who had transformed his world. She joined him later at a small, sunlit cafe tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. They ordered coffee and breakfast, choosing a table by the window where they could watch the world awaken outside. The light caught her hair and the soft curve of her smile. He felt a warmth spread through him, a reminder of why he had fallen in love. Conversation flowed easily, laughter rising and falling with the hum of the cafe. They talked about dreams, small plans for the weekend, and memories from childhood, discovering new layers of each other with every word. As the day progressed, they decided to take a walk through the park. Spring was fully emerging now, and the air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers and fresh grass. Children played in the distance, couples strolled along the paths, and the world seemed to exist only for them in these quiet moments. He reached for her hand, feeling the comfort and reassurance in the simple touch, and she responded with a gentle squeeze. The conversation shifted toward the future. He spoke of hopes he had once considered too distant or impossible, dreams that now felt attainable because of the stability and support she provided. She shared her own aspirations, the things she wanted to explore, learn, and experience. They made small plans together, tentative, but filled with excitement, careful not to overwhelm the present with too many expectations. The discussion was both grounding and inspiring, a reminder that love was not only about feelings, but also about partnership and shared vision. As they walked further into the park, they stumbled upon a small art installation, a display of sculptures and paintings from local artists. They spent time examining each piece, commenting on the colors, textures, and emotions conveyed. He noticed the way she tilted her head thoughtfully, the spark of curiosity in her eyes, and felt a quiet joy in seeing her so engaged and alive. She, in turn, admired his perspective. Appreciating the way he noticed details others might miss, they found a quiet bench near a pond, where ducks floated lazily on the water. They sat side by side, watching the reflections ripple across the surface. The moment was peaceful, almost sacred in its simplicity. He turned to her, speaking softly about the challenges they had faced, the fears they had conquered, and the resilience they had cultivated together. She listened intently, her eyes reflecting understanding and empathy. "I never thought love could be this steady," he admitted, his voice tinged with awe. "I never imagined that someone could see me, truly see me, and choose to stay, despite my flaws and fears." She smiled, her hand finding his. "And I never thought I could trust again," she replied. "But you've shown me patience and honesty, and that has made all the difference." Love isn't about perfection. It's about presence and willingness to grow together. Time seemed to stretch, each moment filled with quiet significance. They shared small jokes, gentle teasing, and laughter that resonated with the depth of their connection. Even the silences felt meaningful, each pause a shared understanding, a comfort that only comes from true intimacy. He realized that this was the kind of love that did not demand constant excitement or drama, but instead thrived in shared presence, trust, and respect. Later, they visited a small bookstore nearby, one with creaking floors and the scent of old pages. They wandered through the aisles, pointing out favorite books, sharing passages that resonated with them, and discussing authors they admired. He saw the way her eyes lit up when she discovered a title she had long wanted to read, and she noticed the thoughtful way he selected passages, reading aloud in a voice that carried both care and enthusiasm. It was an afternoon of simple pleasures, yet it felt profound, a testament to the depth of connection that had grown between them. Evenings were often spent cooking together, experimenting with new recipes, and laughing at minor mishaps. They found joy in small victories, the perfect sauce, a well-prepared dish, or even the simple act of sitting down together to share a meal. These routines, mundane to outsiders, were rich with meaning for them. They were acts of cooperation, patience, and shared joy, building memories that would last a lifetime. Yet life was not without its moments of tension. There were days when external pressures tested their patience, work stress, family obligations, and unexpected responsibilities. On such days, they leaned on each other, communicating honestly about their feelings, offering support, and finding ways to navigate challenges together. These moments, though difficult, strengthened their bond, reminding them that love required both joy and resilience. One evening, after a particularly long day, they decided to take a quiet walk along the river. The night was calm, the water reflecting the city lights like scattered jewels. They walked slowly, hands intertwined, and spoke about the importance of gratitude, resilience, and patience. He shared moments of self-doubt he had felt in the past, and she shared fears that occasionally resurfaced. Together, they acknowledged that vulnerability was not weakness, but a cornerstone of their connection. In the months that followed, the relationship continued to deepen. They celebrated birthdays and small achievements, marking milestones with quiet joy rather than grand gestures. They explored new neighborhoods, tried unfamiliar cuisines, and discovered hidden spots in the city that became their secret places. Each experience reinforced their understanding of one another, teaching them to appreciate not just the big moments, but the quiet, everyday beauty of life together. They also faced minor disagreements. As any couple does, learning to communicate without judgment, to listen without interruption, and to compromise when needed. These instances, far from weakening their bond, reinforced it. They realized that conflict, when approached with honesty and respect, could become an opportunity for growth rather than division. Through it all, he reflected often on the journey that had begun with a single night and a single lie. The lie, once a source of guilt and anxiety, had transformed into a lesson about honesty, courage, and the importance of vulnerability. He understood now that mistakes did not define a person, but how one addressed them did. She, too, had learned the power of patience, trust, and the willingness to see the good in someone despite flaws and fears. One late afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows across the park, they sat together on a blanket, sharing snacks and watching the world move around them. Children played in the distance, couples strolled, and the breeze carried the scent of flowers. He looked at her and felt a profound sense of contentment, a feeling of home and belonging that went beyond words. "I've never felt this sure about anything in my life," he said softly. "Not about work, not about plans, not even about myself sometimes. But I know this, I know us. I know that whatever comes, we will face it together." She rested her head on his shoulder, her hand finding his. "I feel the same," she whispered. "Love is not about being certain every day. It's about choosing each other, again and again, even when life is uncertain. And I choose you always." The sky darkened slowly, stars beginning to appear, tiny points of light that seemed to mirror the quiet sparkle in her eyes. They stayed there for a long while, embracing the peace that came from shared understanding, trust, and a love that had endured challenges, uncertainty, and personal growth. In the weeks that followed, they continued to explore life together with the same gentle balance of patience, honesty, and joy. They traveled to new places, revisited favorite spots, and built traditions that were uniquely theirs. Each day reinforced their commitment to one another, a reminder that love was not about perfection, but about presence, resilience, and the courage to be vulnerable. They also found ways to give back, volunteering together, helping friends, and contributing to their community. These acts, though small, strengthened their sense of shared purpose and deepened the bond that had grown from a night of chance, a small lie, and an unexpected connection. As the story of their lives continued to unfold, they understood that love was an ongoing journey, a series of choices made with care, honesty, and intention. The past, the lie, the fears, the uncertainties had shaped them but no longer defined them. What mattered now was the love they nurtured every day, the trust they cultivated, and the joy they found in one another. And so, they walked forward together, hand in hand, hearts open, ready to face the future. Life would continue to present challenges, surprises, and moments of doubt. But they knew that their love, forged through honesty, patience, and shared growth, would endure. The unexpected had become a lasting truth, a love that was both real and resilient, and they cherished it with every step they took together.